I'm not ashamed of this video title. I have to have fun sometimes. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that the other day I was browsing Twitter, and I thought to myself, I should see what happens when I look up the OC Court of Justice. Lo and behold, there's a ton of tweets from people who have liked my videos. Some of those people have posts for almost every video I made. So I'd like to give a shout out to a few of those people. Thank you Pon Pon Bunny, Muffin Evie, Mewwinks96, Littleflower95, and all the new people that have made up my now 12,000 subscriber fan base. Thank you guys! You're awesome. In this video, we'll talk about what is a self-insert, common themes found in self-inserts, and tips on how to avoid making them. Self-inserts. The bane of almost every fandom. Destroyers of original stories. Terrorizers of hapless nerds who are just trying to find a good read, god damn it. They are defined as characters that are meant to be a projection of the author who made them. They're seen as unrelatable and often a hindrance to the narrative. So let me show you how to make a 100% self-insert free character at only $11.95. I'm kidding. That is nearly, if not impossible. The thing is, each one of us sees, interprets, and reacts to the world in individual ways. We are inherently biased. Our perception of a subject or situation can change because of events that have transpired in our lives. Someone who is dumped and left broken-hearted may see a couple snuggling on a park bench and be disgusted, while someone who is in a happy relationship themselves may react in adoration. Alternatively, maybe that person who was dumped is an optimistic human being and feels hope for the future when they see that couple. That's just yet another perspective reacting differently to the same situation. Because of our unique views of the world, it can be very hard to make a character who feels less like an extension of yourself and more like their own individual person who reacts to the world as dictated by their personal experiences and sense of ego. And that's okay. People can't make perfect things, so it's forgivable if your character is struggling a little in this area. They aren't inherently unlikable because they share some similarities to the author. But wait, you say, what about the convictions you have for being a self-insert? If being a self-insert is okay, why criticize a character for that? Well, it can be okay, but sometimes it's not. I only use the label self-insert if I feel that the self-insert aspects of a character hinder their quality. Like with other story elements, execution and context plays a hand with how your audience will feel about your characters. There are two ways that I identify self-inserts. There's what I call the Class A self-insert and the Class B self-insert. The Class A self-insert features traits that were obviously made with the creator's ideal vision of themselves in mind. I may come to this conclusion if certain traits are illogical for the context of that character and play into the human power fantasy. The Class B self-insert borrows specific traits that frequent in other characters of the creator, which shows that the creator favors these traits and sees them as an integral part of themselves. The underlying message for both types of self-inserts is that the creator chose contextual and visual features for their character that cater to their preferences but aren't valid in the world that the character is featured in or contradict the character in some way. There are common themes that you'll find in characters that suffer from being a self-insert. Let's talk about some of the most common themes and why they're used. They do have a bit in common with the atypical Mary Sue. They tend to be obscenely attractive, are on good terms with everyone, and people who they aren't on good terms with are bad people. Characters from other works of fiction fawn all over them, even when that sort of character wouldn't like them. And they have similar views and opinions to the author that are always justified. By the way, if you haven't seen my Stop Mary Sue video, take a trip down to the description of this video. There'll be a link to it there. Self-inserts that preach the beliefs of the author are often overlooked. Imagine you're reading a story where the main character is openly and vehemently against religion. It's never explained why they feel that way, there's no friction between them and the other people because of it, most everyone else feels exactly the same way, it has nothing to do with the central conflict of the story, and people who are religious are always portrayed as bad. Even as an agnostic atheist who can agree with the sentiment that deities don't exist, I'd be like, boy, this is obnoxious. This doesn't feel like a character anymore. This feels more like the unfiltered mouthpiece of someone who's invading the story we're trying to get into, instead of just putting their beliefs down in a personal blog. So, how do we avoid making bad self-inserts? And how self-inserty can you make a character? You're going to be inserting some of yourself into every character you make. It's almost unavoidable, but you have the power to execute it wisely. I'll give you 4 tips that should help guide you in the right direction. 1. Keep your character's look, history, and abilities in line with the world that they live in. How do you think someone with their history will look at certain situations? This is a very complicated question. So many details factor into how this can be answered. My broken-hearted individual looking at a couple on the bench example best describes how you should be considering how your character is going to react to certain situations based on their past experiences. 2. If you are going to pair them with a character from someone else's work, be sure to research their personality and their history as much as possible. Decide what angle their relationship is, how it came to be, and how it would, to some extent, realistically play out. 3. You have to be willing to change some traits that your character has, if needs be, in order to make a realistic relationship between your character and the people they are closely involved with, be it romantic or platonic. 4. Try playing around with your character's look. For example, if you prefer brown hair, draw them with blonde hair. See how you like it. And if it doesn't look good, you can try another color. Think about giving your character undesirable personality traits, and how they will affect the relationships that character has between their friends, family, and lovers. By the way, those undesirable character traits are usually a good way to bring conflict to the story. 5. Question your intentions for that character. Are they just there to vent for you, or are they actually serviceable to the story? If they're there just to vent for you, do you think the execution of their personality and interaction with the rest of the world is done obnoxiously? Or is it realistic in its own way? There are a lot of ways you can build your characters so that they aren't a glaring representation of yourself that wrecks the narrative of the story and makes the audience roll their eyes. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. It's not like you can't go back if it really just isn't working for you. Of course, you can live your fantasies through your characters however you want. That's what fiction is for. But chances are, if you're posting your creations online, then you're hoping to get feedback. Most of us care about having positive feedback on what we do. Sometimes you can do whatever you want, and people will really like it. Other times, you may have to compromise a bit. But honestly, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be fun. At least I find it fun a lot of the time. Maybe I'm crazy. The answer is yes. It gives you the opportunity to learn how to overcome obstacles to create a successful character that you also like. I've always ended up liking characters I created by stepping out of my comfort zone. It feels like I've really accomplished something, and like they're a separate person from myself I can learn to love. Sometimes during my research to create a character, I find out interesting things about other cultures or events in history, etc. But don't misunderstand me. Don't force yourself to make characters extremely diverse to who you are as a person if you have no interest in doing so. Let it develop organically. If your character feels forced, that might actually be more of a problem than just mostly sticking to what you know and making little changes. Like with my example about religion earlier, you can cater to a specific group of people, but if you're being obnoxious about it, even they won't like it. Well, some might, but just, try new things. Nothing is set in stone, you can always change it back. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What do you think about self-inserts? How far do you think someone can go before people are like, ugh, the author's intentions are way too obvious? I hope you all have a good day. More videos are planned, but I'm still a busy bee, so yeah. We'll see you next time. Bye!